Hello, this is Tessa Brawley-Barker. I'm a genealogy associate at the Genealogy Center at Tulsa City County Library, and this is Researching African American Ancestors, free online resources to get you started. So all of the resources mentioned in this presentation can be found in our African American Ancestors Research Guide on our website. This presentation will focus on the free online resources for African American genealogy research, and you can find the guide. Here is a link to the guide on our website. First off, before we dive into the resources, I'm going to go over some genealogy basics in case you are completely new to genealogy. The first rule of genealogy is always to start with yourself. That entails completing an ancestral chart with all the information you know about your family. And we actually have a free ancestral chart available on our website. If I click on it here, we'll get linked to it. So this is what an ancestral chart looks like. It's also called a pedigree chart. You might also know it as a family tree, but you start off with yourself and work backwards with your father and your mother and their parents, and so on and so on. That's a great way to organize all the data that you have on your family. The next step is if you have any gaps after you've completed a family tree and you find that you have some gaps, you can interview relatives or older relatives to fill in any gaps. You can gather information from vital records such as birth and death certificates, if you have any of those. Family Bibles often had recorded the names of the births of individuals in the family, if you have those on hand, or if a relative has a family Bible. If you have any old letters, scrapbooks, newspaper clippings of obituaries, all these things can contain genealogy information. So they're good resources to check out before you even get started. The next step after you have gone through all of those steps is to begin searching the census. So the US federal census has been taken every 10 years from 1790 to present. The most recent census was taken in 2020. The census records are easily searchable using the Ancestry Library Edition database, which is available at all TCCL locations, including the Genealogy Center. What you want to do is begin with the most recent census year and work backwards. So the most recent census year is 1950. It was just released this year and it's still being transcribed, although a lot of it has been transcribed now. So you can start searching for relatives that you know were alive in 1950 and work backwards from there. Now, 1870 is the first year that all African Americans were included on the census. So once you get to that 1870 year on the census, you'll hit what is known in genealogy as the 1870 brick wall for African Americans. This is only for African Americans who have been in the country prior to 1870. In order to break past that brick wall, there are some tips and tricks you can try. First off, it's talk to the oldest members of your extended family to see if there's an oral history about the location of your enslaved ancestors' plantation. If your ancestors were enslaved and they lived on a plantation, if you figure out the location, that's a good place to start. You can also check the 1870 census for any white families with the same surname as your ancestors. It's not all enslaved people took on the surname of their enslavers, but some of them did initially, possibly. So if you find white families with the same last name as your oldest known relatives around that year, that might be a tip for where your ancestors were located. You can also check wills and probate records of enslavers for names of the enslaved. Now, prior to emancipation, enslaved people were considered property in the United States. And so often they're listed in the wills and probate records of enslavers by name sometimes. So that's a good way to find names occasionally. You can also check the local records of the Freedmen's Bureau records. The Freedmen's Bureau was an agency of early Reconstruction established to assist new freedmen in the South, and it ran from 1865 to 1878. I also, if you click on here, there is a link out. The Freedmen's Bureau records are online. You can see these are the states that are included. So you can click on one of these states and dive through the registers and the records that they have for that particular state. There are also several databases that list the names of enslaved people by state. Not every slave state has a database like this, but a lot of them are working on it. A lot of them have them. They're usually run by universities that have been doing this research for years and years and are compiling all these names into these large databases. So you can, if you have family that was enslaved in North Carolina, you can check this link, the University of North Carolina's Digital Library on American Slavery. In Texas, there's the East Texas Digital Archives Texas Runaway Slave Project, and there's the link to that there. And in Virginia, the Virginia Museum of History and Culture has a database called Unknown No Longer, and there's the link to that one. So you can search for the names of enslaved family members by state in these databases. Now I'm going to be moving on to the free online resources to get you started that are in our resource guide. Again, all of these resources I'm going to be talking about can be found either under this research guide section or in the websites and organizations section of our Researching African American Ancestors Guide, which is freely available on our website. This is the link to get to it. You can also come pick up paper copies in the Genealogy Center at Hardesty Library. So the first research guide I'm going to be talking about is specific to the Ancestry database. You might have a subscription at home to Ancestry.com, but if you don't have a subscription, you can always come into the library. We have a free version of this database called Ancestry Library Edition. You can only use it in the library, but it has most of the same record collections that Ancestry.com has. And this is their research guide for getting started and specifically in African American research in their database. So if you're going to be using Ancestry to do your research, which is one of the biggest databases for genealogy research, this is a great place to get started. It takes you through, working your way back to the 1870 census, how to look at death certificates, how to get beyond 1870, finding the enslavers that might have enslaved your ancestors, looking at property and probate records, ship manifests, which also contain names occasionally. Emancipation records are really important, military records, and they go over the Freedmen's Bureau records, and how to use the slave schedules. So in 1850 and 1860, the US government did censuses of enslaved individuals who were considered property on a separate census schedule. I believe only the males are mentioned on these schedules, but that might be a place to look as well. And not every state had a slave schedule, but a lot of them do. And there's more further tips for continuing your research in this guide. So this is a great guide for getting started in using the Ancestry Library database. Next, I'm going to move on to the Enoch Pratt Free Library's African American genealogy page. So the Enoch Pratt Free Library is the largest public library system in the city of Baltimore, Maryland. I'm going to click through so we can see the page here. So this is their getting started guide that just goes over African American genealogy, how to get started, searching oral histories and family records, sources for records. They have a link to the Freedmen's Bureau, different internet sources that they recommend, and books. And they also have, if you scroll back up the page here, they have an African American department that has a lot of digital collections as well. They have an ephemeral collection and microfilm and photograph collection. African American Marylanders specifically. Baltimore was a port and a hub for moving enslaved people from Africa into the United States. So this is a big location where you might find a lot of records on family members if you're going far back to see how they came into the US. It could have been through the port of Baltimore. But they have a great collection and it's fun to look through their site. A lot of resources there. The next one I'm going to talk about is the Family Search Research Wiki. FamilySearch.org is another huge genealogy research site. It's very popular. You do need an account to have access to Family Search, but it is a free account. Once you create that account, you have free access to the records. They are owned, the website is owned by the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's the largest genealogical library in the world, I believe. So they have tons and tons of resources, lots of stuff digitized online at FamilySearch.org. But my favorite thing about Family Search is actually their research wiki. This is like based on Wikipedia. They're basically like Wikipedia pages that are managed through Family Search, and they have tons and tons of helpful information. They have specific pages on doing any kind of genealogy on a specific country or ethnicity. And I really like the Researching African American Genealogy page. I'm going to click through to it here. As you can see, it's set up just like a Wikipedia page. There's the introduction, research steps, and they go through 1, 2, 3, how you start working on your genealogy search. They have links to different federal records and other websites and related articles. And then they also have links to original records over here, which are really helpful. Just look, Bible records, cemeteries, church records, court records, Freedmen's Bank and Bureau, newspapers, obituaries. So there's lots of stuff to find in here. They also have just a general African American genealogy page with pages by state. So you can specifically go, like, let's go to the Oklahoma page, African American resources for Oklahoma. So as you can see, there's a lot of stuff to find in here, online resources, books to read, links to other types of records. So there's a lot of stuff to find. Here's the different record types. I just cannot impress upon you how much there is on the Family Search Wiki. I use it a lot. There's a lot of stuff here. So that's linked in our guide, so you can find it yourself, but it's just, you can just deep dive into research in the Family Search Wiki. Now, this research guide is specific to Oklahoma. This is the Oklahoma Historical Society Research Center's African American Resource Guide. I'm going to go ahead and click through to the actual guide here. This is on their website, but it offers resources, as it says, related to the Black experience in Oklahoma. They detail what they have in their collections. These are all the African American newspapers that they have on microfilm at the Oklahoma Historical Society, which is in Oklahoma City. They have this map of all the historic Black towns in Oklahoma. There are different manuscript collections that relate to African Americans in Oklahoma, and oral history collections as well, and additional online resources for research that they give information on here. So this is a really helpful guide. On their website, they have, let's see, they have some collections digitized, but not everything. So you might need to go to the Oklahoma Historical Society to see some of these records, but some of them are online too. So it's worth looking at their website. It's okhistory.org. And as you can see on the bottom here, they have their other contact information. If you want to do research there, you can call them at this number and make an appointment, or you can explore their website at okhistory.org. But they have a lot of resources specific to African Americans in Oklahoma. So now I'm going to move on to more general websites for researching African American genealogy. The first one is Cindy's List. Cindy's List is a huge index of genealogy resources online. If I click through, this is the African American page on Cindy's List. As you can see, so she has it organized by category. So there's birth, marriage, and death records, cemetery and funeral homes, census records, history and culture, like all of these things. Let's see if we click on obituaries. Oh, we get a pop-up ad. We have to click through. But if you move through, just ignore all the ads on this page, but you can get selected obituaries from the Michigan Chronicle. So there are some digitized obituaries of African Americans from the Michigan Chronicle, which it says is the oldest surviving African American newspaper in the state. Wow, so that's really interesting. So just clicking through on a lot of these resources can lead you to digital records online. So this is a great place to just dig in and see if they have any records related to the location that you're looking into. Again, that's Cindy's List. Next, we're going to look at the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. This is a great way to connect with other people who are doing genealogy research on their African American ancestors. I'm going to click through to the website here. As you can see, they have a conference coming up in October, it looks like, that you can attend. You can also find local chapters to join. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like they have an Oklahoma chapter, but they do have a Texas and a Kansas chapter. So perhaps if you're local to Tulsa, you could join one of those nearby chapters. But I like their genealogy section here. They have a beginner's 101 guide. Genealogy classes that they list, how to start your family history, just lots of interesting things here. Oh, it looks like this one's having trouble loading for me. I'm going to go back to this. Here's the interactive guide for beginners that I was looking for. This is the same guide that it's on our next site, Afrogenius. So this is a great guide to get you started, but it's an interactive guide that you walk through step by step on how the internet can help you find African American genealogy resources, different places to look, how to tell your story, all kinds of details. I'm going to click exit. Oh, it popped us back to Afrogenius. I'm getting ahead of us. So anyway, this is the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. And they also, I wanted to also mention that they have a scholarly journal, which you can download directly, which is useful, even if they're not writing an article on your particular family member. The way in which they conduct their research might be helpful to you as you do your own research. So it's worth looking into those. So next, I'm going to go back to my presentation here, and we're going to go to Afrogenius. So as you can see, the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society and Afrogenius share some links. So they're connected organizations, I believe, or they support one another at least. So Afrogenius is a site devoted to African-American genealogy, to researching African ancestry in the Americas in particular, and to genealogical research and resources in general. And it's also a community with a mailing list and a message board and it's another way to connect with other people who are doing research. So now we're in Afrogenius. My favorite place in Afrogenius is their records tab. That beginner's guide that we got to from the previous site is also available here that you can walk through. But they also have census records for African Americans, death record database. You have to scroll down, just ignore this stuff at the top and scroll down the page. This is a great place to search for. I'm going to type in the name Johnson, the surname Johnson, in the state of Oklahoma, and let's see what we get. Someone with the last name of Johnson who died in the state of Oklahoma. And if we click on it, we go down, here's the result. There was a Ben Johnson who died in 1922 in LaFleur County, Oklahoma. And if you click on that, they have the transcription of the obituary from the Poto News. And unfortunately, he died of smallpox, and there was a smallpox outbreak in Poto that led from the county jail apparently at that time. So it's amazing to find these transcribed obituary records that are in the site. So I really like this, the death records database, because it has obituaries, funeral programs, and cemetery records that have been transcribed. So it's worth looking up a name in there to see if you find someone you're related to in one of these databases. They, as I said, they also have these transcribed census records, library records, a slave data collection, and a surnames database. So you can look up your family name and find relatives that way as well. So there's lots of fun stuff in Afrogenius. It's kind of a funny website, and it has some ads sometimes, but you just have to scroll down and get to those record collections, and you can find a lot of stuff. Next, I'm going to talk about the National Archives section on African American history. I'm going to go ahead and click through to their website here. They include links to photographs, archive collections, subject portals, blogs and articles. Basically, this is the American Archives is the largest archival collection in the United States of federal records. But of course, they also have records just documenting the history of people who lived in the United States. So they have an African American collection. They have tons of stuff here. As you can see, these are the subject portals. You can search. They have some featured records here. You can search a lot of their record collections. Some of them have been digitized, some of them have not, but you can always contact them if you're not finding the record that you need, or if you're finding it, but it's only at the National Archives and not online. But my favorite part about this page, where I found a lot of interesting information, is this History Hub message board. As you can see, it has a link at the bottom here that says find answers to your African American history questions at History Hub. And I clicked on this, and there was a question from 6 months ago about finding slaves and slave owners. And I found a lot of useful information here. This is where I found all those different databases. from the different states, former slave states that have databases of the names of enslaved people, which I had no idea there were so many of them, and it's just really great to find that. But I also found this great document linked in here from a presentation that was given at the National Archives several years ago. It's a guide to federal records that help identify former enslaved people and slaveholders. So it goes through census records, where to look, the slave census schedules, as I mentioned before, Civil War and pension files. So these are all records that are at the National Archives, some of them digitized, some of them not. As you can see, she's got links when they're available. But yeah, military records. So this is like a really great resource that I just stumbled upon by looking through History Hub on the National Archives website. So it's fun to dig through these message boards. You can find lots of gems in here. But again, I found that by going to the National Archives website for African American history, and then scrolling all the way down to History Hub at the bottom of the page, and then looking through those questions, and that's where I found it. So otherwise, I don't know where to find that guide online. So it's good to look through these different questions. Like, as you can see, people have asked about specific relatives. So there's lots of stuff that you can find in here and you can participate in and ask questions, and someone from the National Archives will respond to you. Next, I'm going to look at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. This is the newest Smithsonian National Museum, and it focuses specifically on African American history and culture. As you can see, it's a beautiful new building. I used to live in the Washington, D.C. area when this museum opened, and it was a very hot ticket to get in. I was never able to get in, actually, because it was so popular. It was really hard. It's free to go, but you have to reserve your ticket, and I never was able to make a reservation in time to get in. But my father was, and he said it was extremely powerful to go through this museum. So it's worth a visit if you're in the DC area. All the Smithsonian museums are free to visit, of course, and this is one of them that's worth a visit for sure. But what I wanted to highlight, I mean, they have this Explore where you can search their collection and exhibitions and publications and everything that they're doing, that they're working on at the museum. But I wanted to highlight their library. So their library is located, if you click on this Learn button at the top and click on Library, you'll be connected down to their library page. So this is one of the Smithsonian libraries. As you see, there's 21 libraries in the system. So this is just one of them, and they share their collections with one another. But not only does the library collect and provide access to resources that support research in African American history, culture, and the African diaspora, the library also supports research in genealogy and family history. So they have a lot of genealogy resources at this particular library. If you scroll down, it gives you information on how to use the library. You can search the catalog from home without having to go there. And you can, if we scroll down further, you can contact a genealogist at askagenealogist@si.edu. So if you're specifically interested in genealogy research, this is the email that you want to use for contacting them, although they do have a phone number here, but I have a feeling they'll refer you to this email if you're looking into genealogy specifically. Next, I'm going to visit the Access Genealogy website. So this is a free genealogy website. that has pages dedicated to different ethnic backgrounds for research, including a section they have, let's see, let's click on it, called, it's kind of a funny, it's a funny website. I think it's crowdsourced, which, you know, people, different people who are doing genealogy research contribute to it and can add to it. But they have a section that they call Black Genealogy here. And if we scroll down, here we are, they have this little, and again, ignore these ads. A lot of these websites, because they're run by people, just regular people doing genealogy research, they have a lot of ads on them, and you just have to scroll through those and ignore them. But they have this little introductory section here. And if you scroll further down, they have African American genealogy records by state. And if you scroll further down, and these are all digitized records, they have African American cemetery records by state as well for certain states, census records for certain states, and slave owners by Alabama and Louisiana, which might be useful. They also have links to online books. And these are recent posts relating to Black genealogy by people who contribute to this website. But if we scroll back up, I want to give you an idea of what you'll find. So I'm going to click on the Arkansas page for African American genealogy records by state. Oh, again, got to ignore this ad, close the ad. Just keep scrolling on through. We get to this section. It has this little introduction again. It has records at the National Archives, the state archive records, different societies. As you can see, there's an Arkansas Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society. They have Arkansas slave narrative links, cemetery record links by county. And you can see not every county, of course, but some counties. And census records as well for Arkansas that are organized by county. And, oh, even church records, court records. I mean, they have a lot of stuff here. And these are all, you know, digital online records. So there's a lot of useful information here. As you can see, they're linking over to the surname database that was on Afrogenius that we where we were visiting previously. So a lot of these sites link to each other because they have good information and they're all connecting to each other. But this is the type of stuff that you'll find on Access Genealogy. They do have a lot of records by state, which can be really helpful if you know the location of where your ancestors were from. And let's go back to our presentation here. The final website that I want to bring your attention to is the African American Resource Center at the Tulsa City County Library here in Tulsa. It's located at the Rudisill Regional Library in North Tulsa. And the purpose is to collect, preserve, and provide access to resources honoring and documenting the experiences of people of African descent. And they both have current and comprehensive resource materials. So this isn't specifically a genealogy collection, but they do have a lot of books on the history of African Americans in Oklahoma and in Tulsa. So it's a good resource to check out if you're in the Tulsa area and if you have family from the Tulsa area or Oklahoma. So I'm going to scroll down their website here. As you can see, they have a section on the history of Oklahoma's all Black towns. They have a page on the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921. And if you scroll down even more, there's a Research Your Family History section here with the link to the African American Heritage Database, which is a database exclusively devoted to African American family history research. This can only be accessed from a Tulsa City County Library location. You can't use this database from home, but you can use it either at the African American Resource Center or at another Tulsa Library branch. But this is a great resource for searching historical records for African Americans specifically. So this is a great resource that we have at this library. Finally, I want to highlight the books that are in our research guide. We don't have a lot of African American genealogy research books, but we do have some. I'm going to click over to our link here. We're always interested in buying more of these. As you can see, these are the books that we have in our collection. A lot of them are beginner's guides or resource guides, finding your unique heritage, things like this. So yeah, a lot of them are beginner guides. So they're helpful to go through if you're just getting started. Or if you're at that brick wall place where you're frustrated about how to keep moving forward, some of these books might have some tips. And as you can see from this page, some of these titles are in library use only, but some of them are available for checkout. So you can scroll down this page to find out which of these are available to check out and which you have to come to the library to use. You can always make copies of the pages that you want from these books, though, if you come use them in the library. Just wanted to highlight some of the books in our guide too. And if you're interested in starting your genealogy, or if you've already done a lot of research, but you've hit a brick wall, you can contact the Genealogy Center to set up an appointment to meet with one of our genealogy staff members. You can email us at jenaskus@tulsalibrary.org. That's our email address here. Or you can call us at 918-549-7691. And here's also a link to our website where you can find more resources, including our African American research guide that I've been talking about throughout this presentation. There are other resource guides there as well. So we have a lot of information on our website for you to look through too. But we'd love to see you in the Genealogy Center. And that is the end of my presentation. I hope you found some of these resources useful and interesting. And thank you again for watching my presentation.